There are over 600 people on California death row. James Marlowe, 35 years on death row. Kaufman and James Marlowe abducted a woman after she left work in an insurance office and held her captive while Marlowe sodomized her until they obtained her banking information, then strangled her and dumped her body in a field. 5 days later, Marlowe and Kaufman assaulted and killed a 19-year-old woman from the dry cleaning shop where she worked in Orange County. In addition, Marlowe was charged in the 1986 murder-for-hire killing of a man in Kentucky. Robert Maury, 35 years on death row. He killed 3 women and raped the 4th, then called the Shasta County Crime Investigation Line to seek money for tips and where the bodies were located. Manuel Mendoza, 35 years on death row. After a string of robberies to support his cocaine habit and while on the run from police, Mendoza tied a woman to her bed, robbed her, then set her house on fire. She died of severe burns. Lester Ochoa, 35 years on death row. Ochoa kidnapped, essayed, and stabbed to death a 16-year-old girl, leaving her body on the grounds of a school. He previously robbed and assaulted 2 other women. David Rundle, 35 years on death row. Rundle, with a history of sexual abuse and assaults, attacked 3 young women, binding their hands behind their backs, killing them, and leaving their bodies in the woods. Andre Alexander, 34 years on death row. Alexander and another man attempted to rob 2 people who turned out to be Secret Service agents on a stakeout, killing one of the agents in the process. Alexander was charged more than a decade later. Jason Balcom, 34 years on death row. Balcom was in Michigan prison serving a 50-year sentence for essay in 2004 when DNA evidence connected him to the 1988 essay and stabbing death of a 22-year-old woman in Costa Mesa. Mark Bradford, 34 years on death row. Threatened with eviction for failing to pay rent, Bradford essayed and sodomized the new manager of his apartment complex, then returned and slit her throat. Tracy Carter, 34 years on death row. Carter and 2 others robbed a couple whose church bus had broken down, killing the man. Shortly after, they killed another man in a liquor store parking lot. Mark Crew, 34 years on death row. In order to kill a former girlfriend whose money he sought, Crew married her to convince her to take a cross-country trip during which he shot her in the head. The body was never found. Joseph Danks, 34 years on death row. Danks, known as the Koreatown Slasher, was sentenced to 156 years in prison for killing 6 homeless people in Los Angeles. He received the death penalty when he was condemned after he strangled his first prison cellmate to death. John Holt, 34 years on death row. Holt was working as a door-to-door salesman of cleaning products when he entered the home of a Bakersfield woman and killed her. Chris Hughes, 34 years on death row. Sent home from his construction job because he was high on drugs, Hughes essayed and murdered the woman who lived in an apartment upstairs from him. Richard Letner, 34 years on death row. Letner and crime partner Christopher Tobin killed a 59-year-old woman, slitting her throat and severing her spine during a robbery of her home. Milton Lewis, 34 years on death row. Lewis killed his drug supplier, then robbed him, giving part of the money to a girlfriend who spent it on meth. Maureen McDermot, 34 years on death row. McDermot hired 3 men to kill the man she lived with so she could inherit the house and collect on a $100,000 life insurance policy. Kurt Michaels, 34 years on death row. After psychiatric discharge from the Marines, Michaels killed the mother of his 16-year-old girlfriend during a robbery of her house. Evan Nakahara, 34 years on death row. At 19 years old, he shot a 20-year-old woman he had dated for several years in order to steal her father's gun collection and war memorabilia. His accomplice, Michael Rojas, was tried separately and sentenced to 7 years for robbery and being an accessory to murder. Ramon Salcido, 34 years on death row. In a 3-hour period, Salcido drove his 3 daughters to a gulch and slit their throats, drove to his mother-in-law's house where he stabbed her and her 2 daughters, returned home and shot his wife, and then drove to the vineyard where he worked and shot 2 supervisors. 7 of the 9 victims died. Mark Schmeck, 34 years on death row. Schmeck killed a man who had advertised to sell his motorhome. Christopher Tobin, 34 years on death row. Tobin and crime partner Richard Letner killed a 59-year-old woman, slitting her throat and severing her spine during a robbery of her home. Paul Bolan, 33 years on death row. Bolan shot and killed his partner for bringing strangers to the area where they were growing Mary Jane in Kern County. Bolan shot the visitors as well, killing one and wounding the other. Christopher Box, 33 years on death row. Box and Manuel Flores Jr. killed a woman, her 3-year-old son, and a house guest during a robbery, and they attempted to kill a fourth person. Stephen Brown, 33 years on death row. Brown and another condemned man, Charles Keith Richardson, essayed and murdered an 11-year-old girl, drowning her in a bathtub. Delano Cleveland, 33 years on death row. Cleveland and 2 others sentenced to death row, Chauncey Beasley and Rajesh Sharan, shot to death and robbed 2 drug dealers at a Pomona motel. The sentence for Sharan, who had no prior felonies, was converted to life without parole. Ronnie DeMent, 33 years on death row. He killed his county jail cellmate while attempting to force him to have relations. Curtis Irvin, 33 years on death row. In a contract killing, Irvin and an accomplice kidnapped the ex-wife of their client and stabbed her to death. Ronald Jones, 33 years on death row. Jones and a partner abducted a woman at a Pasadena shopping mall, repeatedly essayed her, then shot her in the head and dumped her body on the side of the road. Raymond Lewis, 33 years on death row. Lewis did drugs with a woman before strangling and beating her to death with a board to steal her money. James O'Malley, 33 years on death row. O'Malley stabbed and shot to death the wife of a fellow motorcycle gang member to prevent her from getting a divorce settlement. He killed a man who wanted to join the gang in order to steal his motorcycle and murdered a friend who he thought was an informant. John Sapp, 33 years on death row. After his arrest for possession of a firearm, Sapp confessed to 3 unsolved murders over a 10-year period, including that of his girlfriend and what he said was a contract killing. He confessed to a 4th killing and 2 attempted murders for which he was not charged. Michael Slaughter, 33 years on death row. Slaughter killed 3 men who sought to buy $45,000 of cocaine from him. Tauno Waidla, 33 years on death row. Waidla and Peter Zacharias killed an American-Estonian civic leader who had taken them in after their flight from Estonia, strangling her and bludgeoning her with a hatchet. Zacharias also was condemned, but the state Supreme Court overturned his death sentence in 2005. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.